Good morning. Welcome to 30 Days of Transformation. Today is day 19, and I'm going to be talking about sort of following up from what I talked about yesterday in terms of worldview. So, yesterday I was talking about somebody that I met, a person who's been working on my basement, who was telling me about how a challenge in his life led him to shift his worldview. And that's often true for many of us, that there's some kind of challenge that helps us change, And as much as those challenges can be really difficult, they come into our lives for important reasons, Nothing is an accident. Everything, and I love this phrase, nothing is an accident. Everything is an incident, right? There are no accidents. There are only incidents. Because incidents are essentially, what that phrase is saying essentially is that there is a cause and an effect to everything in the universe. And it's the law of the universe. It's not sort of just science. It's the way that, well, science is important, of course, but it's the way the universe flows. And so, it can lead us to understanding that sometimes when these things happen in our life, as tragic and as awful and as horrible as they are, there's something that evolves or emerges from that. And certainly right now, at this time in history, we are becoming more and more aware. We have the potential to become more and more aware of the emergent qualities of the universe that there is, and in the emergent qualities in our lives, that there are constantly things emerging that we have an opportunity to pay attention to, which leads us to today's topic, this idea of interdependence and interconnectedness. So as I mentioned yesterday, and I'm not the only person who has talked about this, obviously there's many people who talk about this, that at the heart of many of the problems in our world is this disconnected worldview, or this tendency to see the world in terms of disconnectedness. And so when we see the world in terms of disconnectedness, it leads us to things like isolation, to loneliness, to alienation, which then lends itself to many health problems. Some of the people that are talking about addiction, some of the experts in addiction, like Gabor Mate, talk about how isolation and alienation are the opposite of addiction. And I'm sorry, are addiction. And the opposite of addiction is connectivity and the feeling of community, the feeling of not being isolated. To me, it's so key, not just in addiction, not just in chronic pain, but in every health challenge, just about every health challenge. Of course, there's things that we have no control over, but when I'm talking about the lifestyle health challenges, like the heart disease stuff and obesity and diabetes, and things that are driven often by behaviors that are often driven by feelings of isolation and loneliness. So the shift, the change is interconnectedness and interdependency. Those two ideas, to understanding and embracing those ideas is critical, is really important in our own personal transformation process. So how do we do this? I put a quote up here today from Alex Gray, who's a visionary artist. If you haven't seen his work, please Google him, and his work is widely available. And some of it's a little different, but the point is that what he looks for in his art, what he looks to convey, is this interconnectedness of all things on a vibratory level, even on a vibration level. So when you're with somebody, we start to, our biofields, the energy in our body starts to connect, and we start to vibrate on a similar level, which is why the yogis always talked about satsang being so important. Like who you hang out with is important, because you will start vibrating together. The Framingham Heart Study from Massachusetts, which is a longitudinal study that looked at why do some people start to develop behaviors that lead towards chronic illnesses, particularly heart disease. Then we looked at all sorts of things. And what they discovered was that your social connectivity was more important than anything. So who you are connected to Even, they said, even people you're not directly connected to. Like if you had a friend of a friend of a friend who quit smoking, that would increase your chances of quitting smoking in terms of these lifestyle factors. And if your best friend started to become obese, you would start to become obese. If you've ever been to those weddings where like the whole side, one side of the family is, the whole family is obese, that's because that stuff is contagious. It's interconnected. It's completely interconnected. So to walk around like we're isolated and we're alienated is actually a misperception in our worldview, right? So we are intimately connected. How do we see that interconnectivity? How do we shift our perspective? The tagline of subtle yoga for a long time was shift perspective. I just changed it to build resilience. I'm still using both of them. But this idea of shifting into seeing everything as connected is really critical. How do we do it? The yogis had practices. So actually, the yamas and niyamas, which are the first two limbs of yoga, the first of the yamas, the first of the limbs is yama, and yama means something like, how do I create pro-social behavior? How do I engage with others? How do we co-regulate our nervous system? These ideas. So the first one is ahimsa, non-harming, and then satya, honesty, asteya, non-stealing, and then the fourth one is called brahmacharya, and it often gets mistranslated. I don't know if it's mistranslated, but it often gets translated as abstinence or celibacy or something like that, or control over the senses. But if we really break down etymologically the word brahmacharya, Brahma means oneness, and charya is a cognative car, and it means to drive. So it means to drive with oneness, to drive with Brahma, like you're driving and you got Brahma in the passenger seat. And so that means everything you see in your drive, everything that you pay attention to as you're going down your road of life, is filtered through the eyes of oneness. Wow. I just find that concept so mind-blowing. If I filter everything through the eyes of oneness, then I can see the interconnectivity in everything. And the yogis had practices. They had mantras for that. I teach those practices in my training programs, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have any special practice. Have a mantra, have one, even just one saying, like all is one. In Asheville, many years ago, there were these bumper stickers, all one, that were all over the place, all over the Subarus here. And it is a bumper sticker, for sure. It's like a bumper sticker idea, but at the same time, we have to go much deeper than the bumper sticker idea and feel it in all the cells of our body and feel that interconnectedness. And what that leads us to, when we feel the interconnectedness, then we start to understand interdependency. And interdependency is not codependency at all. It's just saying that everything, I'm dependent on everything. I'm dependent on the farmers. I'm dependent on the people who take care of the water systems. I'm dependent on the people who build the roads. I'm dependent on the people who, are at the stores taking care of me. I'm dependent upon my friends. I'm dependent upon my family. I'm dependent upon people I don't even know, And when we get this concept of interdependency, then what arises is feelings of deep and pervasive gratitude, feelings of deep connection, feelings of brotherhood and sisterhood, in not a hippie kind of 60s way, or maybe it is a hippie 60s way. I don't know. I was probably born in the wrong decade, but that idea that this is my family. This is one human family. And if I treat everybody as a family member, that cause and effect, that starts to come back to me, and I start to feel loved and cared for. I start to feel that the trees and the grass and everything in the universe is vibrating and connecting and with a vibration of love for me. And I start to vibrate that to everyone as well. Yeah. So think about that for tonight. And maybe do it for today if you like. It's Sunday. It's a good day for it, right? So think about that if you like for today. Walking or driving my car, walking with Brahman. So everything I see filters through the eyes of oneness. It's a practice. It's part of the yamas. You know, the yamas are practices as much as they're states. And I'm leaving you with a quote from Alex Gray, which is, I think, just beautiful. This idea that infinite vibratory levels, the dimensions of interconnectedness are without end. All beings and things are residents in your awareness. Yeah. So we bring that in, that shift of perspective, that starts to shift our worldview. And that really, it's the essence of the spiritual worldview. It's the essence of health. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Namaste.